Most pitmasters have a wood they swear by, but ask them why hickory tastes different from cherry, and 9 out of 10 will just say it's stronger. The real answer is happening at a molecular level inside your smoker, and it changes everything about how you choose wood. Welcome to the Meatz. Today we're cracking open the actual chemistry of wood smoke, why each species produces a genuinely different flavor profile, what your meat is absorbing and why, and which woods pair best with which cuts. This is the stuff culinary scientists dig into, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand your smoker better than most people who've been using one for 20 years. Let's start with a question that sounds simple but almost nobody answers correctly. What is smoke, actually? We think of it as just hot air and haze, but smoke is a complex mixture of hundreds of chemical compounds, gases, tiny liquid droplets, and fine particles, all suspended together. The flavor compounds in smoke come primarily from a substance called lignin. Every tree contains lignin. It's the structural polymer that makes wood rigid, and when lignin burns at the low oxygen-starved temperatures inside a smoker, it doesn't just disappear, it breaks apart into a cascade of aromatic molecules. The most important of these are guaiacol, syringol, and their many derivatives. Guaiacol is smoky and spicy. Syringol is what gives smoke that deep, almost sweet campfire warmth. Together, they form the backbone of smoked flavor. Here's where it gets interesting, and this is the first thing I want you to hold on to. Different species of wood contain different ratios of lignin subtypes. Hardwoods like oak and hickory are high in a lignin structure that generates more guaiacol when it combusts. Fruitwoods like cherry and apple contain lignin with higher syringol-producing ratios. That's not just a poetic distinction. It means the actual molecules landing on your brisket are chemically different depending on what's burning in your firebox. Now let's talk about the 3 woods in our title, because each one tells a completely different story. Hickory is the classic American smokewood, and there's a reason it's been the go-to for Southern barbecue for generations. Hickory is dense and resinous, with a high lignin content that burns hot and releases intense concentrations of guaiacol. That's where you get that punchy, almost bacon-like smokiness that cuts right through fatty pork shoulder or beef ribs. It's aggressive, it's assertive. Too much hickory on a delicate cut and you'll overpower everything good about the meat. But on a pork butt, going low and slow for 12 hours, hickory smoke builds into layers of complexity that you simply can't fake. The fat rendering out of the meat actually helps absorb and bind those smoke compounds into the bark. The crust you see on a great smoked pork butt is not just caramelized surface, it's a concentrated layer of smoke chemistry.
Oak is the workhorse of serious competition barbecue, and the reason is control. Oak burns at a predictable, even temperature and releases a balanced profile of smoke compounds, not as aggressive as hickory, not as sweet as fruitwoods. The flavor is earthy, slightly tannic, and deeply savory. That tannin note is real. Oak trees are high in tannins, the same compounds that give red wine its dry, grippy finish, and trace amounts survive combustion and carry into the smoke. When you're cooking a full packer brisket for 16 hours, you want that consistency. Post oak, specifically, is what Central Texas BBQ is built on. And the reason Central Texas brisket tastes like nothing else in the world isn't just the technique, it's the specific lignin chemistry of post oak, producing a cleaner, more transparent smoke that lets the beef shine rather than dominate it. Here's a question worth sitting with for a moment. Why does cherry wood make meat look so good? We'll come back to that, but keep it in mind. Cherry wood is where things get genuinely beautiful. It's a fruit wood, which means lower lignin density, a gentler burn, and a smoke profile that skews heavily towards syringol and its sweet, fruity derivatives. The smoke from cherry is mild and almost floral, but the flavor isn't even the most dramatic thing cherry does to your food. Cherry smoke contains higher concentrations of certain phenolic compounds that react with the myoglobin in meat to produce an almost impossibly deep mahogany color. That dark, jewel-toned bark you see on cherry-smoked chicken thighs or pork ribs, that's photogenic for a reason. It's chemistry. Cherry is why competition pitmasters who need their racks of ribs to photograph beautifully often blend it with a stronger wood like hickory. The hickory carries the flavor weight, and the cherry handles the visual impact. That idea of blending is worth its own conversation, because this is where understanding the science actually pays off at the grill. Think of wood blending the way a chef thinks about seasoning. You're layering flavor compounds. A common competition blend is oak for structure, hickory for depth, and cherry for color and sweetness. The ratios depend on the meat. Heavy beef cuts can handle more hickory. Poultry and fish are delicate enough that cherry or apple alone can be plenty. Adding hickory to a salmon fillet is like seasoning with a hammer. Now let me bring in something that puts all of this in a wider context. There's a book called How to Read a French Fry by food science writer Russ Parsons. over 300 pages of kitchen science, with more than 100 recipes, exploring the molecular mechanics behind why food behaves the way it does when heat is applied. The point Parsons keeps returning to is that understanding the science doesn't take the magic out of cooking. It makes you a more intuitive cook, because instead of memorizing rules, you actually understand why things happen.
That's exactly the mindset that separates a truly skilled pitmaster from someone who just follows a recipe. When you know why cherry smoke creates that bar color, you can make informed decisions mid-cook instead of just hoping for the best. One more layer to this, and it's the one that surprises people most. Smoke penetration into meat is not unlimited, and it's not evenly distributed. The smoke ring, that pink layer just beneath the surface that every barbecue lover knows, is actually a chemical reaction between nitrogen dioxide in the smoke and the myoglobin in the meat. It forms in the first few hours of the cook, before the surface dries out and becomes less permeable. After a certain point, the bark acts as a semi-barrier. So the idea that longer smoking means more smoke flavor in the interior is largely a myth. What you're building over those final hours is bark complexity and fat rendering, not deeper smoke penetration. Here's the Pitmaster's tip that changes how you set up your smoke. The most flavor impact happens in the first 3 to 4 hours of a long cook, when the meat surface is still moist and receptive. This is when your choice of wood matters most. Some competition pitmasters run their most flavorful wood blend early in the cook, then switch to a milder, cleaner wood, or even pure hardwood charcoal for the back half. They're not being lazy, they're working with the science. So the next time you reach for that bag of hickory chunks or a split of post oak, you're not just picking a flavor. You're selecting a specific set of molecules, a burn profile, and a chemical interaction with your meat that no other wood will replicate. That's the real craft inside the smoke. Now I want to hear from you. What's your go-to smoke wood, and what do you cook with it? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know your combination. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Meatz. And next time, we're getting hands-on with a full competition-style brisket cook, step by step, bark to slice. You are not going to want to miss it.